President Vladimir Putin of Russia ordered his forces to stop all military activity against Ukraine from Saturday evening through Sunday, declaring an Easter ceasefire. Now, part of the aim of the Easter truce was aimed at showing an impatient Trump administration that Moscow was still open to peace talks. Putin then threw the ball in Ukraine's court. Putin claimed that Kyiv's response would shed light on Ukraine's desire and indeed its ability to take part in negotiations to end the war.
Руководствуясь гуманитарными соображениями, сегодня с 18:00 часов до 00 часов с воскресенья на понедельник российская сторона объявляет пасхальное перемирие. Приказываю на этот период остановить все боевые действия. Исходим из того, что украинская сторона последует нашему примеру. При этом наши войска должны быть готовы к отражению возможных нарушений перемирия и провокаций со стороны противника.
The peace offer seemed designed to do two things. One, appeal to President Trump and put President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine into a bit of a spot. He could reject the truce and then risk angering Trump, or he could take it and risk letting Russia take advantage of a planned cessation in hostilities to try and gather its forces for a renewed push. To this offer, Zelensky responded by saying that Ukraine would abide by a truce so long as Russia did, and if Russia kept fighting, then so would Ukraine.
Ми знаємо, що захищаємо, знаємо, за що боремось, за кого і заради кого. І тому кожного разу, як би важко нам не було, ми все одно не втрачаємо віру. Бо ця віра один в одного, в тих, хто стоїть поруч з тобою, в українців, в Україну. Віра в те, що зло має свою годину, а Бог має свій день.
Air raid sirens rang out in Kiev, Ukraine's capital, around 5 p.m. local time, shortly after Putin announced the ceasefire. But after a couple of hours after the truce was all set to begin, a Ukrainian official said that the Russians were continuing to fire just as before in all directions. Most of the firing happened in the east. Zelensky said that Russian assaults continued in several places along the front lines and that Russian artillery fire had not subsided. Russia previously had declared a unilateral ceasefire for the Eastern Orthodox Christmas in January of 2023. At that time, Zelensky had dismissed the idea as cynical posturing that was meant to allow Russia to reposition its soldiers and its equipment. The Kremlin also quickly sought to turn Washington's attention to Putin's announcement. Kirill Dmitriev, who is an envoy for Vladimir Putin, who traveled to Washington earlier this month, posted the news on X, the social media site, and he added, "One step closer to peace," with an emoji of a dove. Putin's peace move came a day after the Trump administration made its impatience open and clear with Russia's intransigence to agree to a 30-day ceasefire. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said in Paris, where he arrived for negotiations over the weekend with the Europeans, that the Trump administration was frustrated with how Russia and Ukraine were not moving towards a quick peace. He even said that if both parties were not interested, then the United States was moving on to other business.
We're not going to continue to fly all over the world and do meeting after meeting after meeting if no progress is being made. So if they're serious about peace, either side or both, we want to help. If it's not going to happen, then we're just going to move on. We're going to move on to other topics that are equally, if not more important in some ways, to the United States.
Even President Trump, in a White House briefing before the weekend, seemed to express his frustration at the lack of a quick ceasefire. He even referenced to both Russia and Ukraine as fools if they were not going to agree to a 30-day truce as proposed by his advisors.
If for some reason one of the two parties makes it very difficult, we're just going to say you're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible people, and we're going to just take a pass. But hopefully we won't have to do that. No, Marco's right in saying it. We want to see it end.
And then later on social media, Trump tweeted that he's hoping that this week Russia and Ukraine will be able to come to some kind of an agreement. But over the weekend, in yet another sign that both Russia and Ukraine were trying to show positive movement on the war, Both countries exchanged the largest number of prisoners in a single swap since the invasion began in February of 2022. Zelensky confirmed that 277 Ukrainian soldiers have returned home in time for Easter. Russian officials confirmed that 246 Russian soldiers were also sent home. Now, many in both Europe and in America are doubtful whether Donald Trump can forge a quick peace. Neither Russia nor Ukraine have shown any particular interest in a quick ceasefire. Russia in particular seems to be pressing on with the battlefield advantage, with major attacks on civilians in Sumy as well as in Kyryl, in which long-range missiles were used. This didn't seem to indicate that Putin was interested in Trump's 30-day ceasefire plan. But the Easter Sunday peace offer might have been designed to just give enough carrot to Trump before the stick can be wielded out again on the battlefield. The movement towards peace is going much more slowly than it should be, and not the way that one would want it to be. Right now, Putin is not just fighting, but he is seizing the moment. He wants to achieve maximum gains of territory before substantive talks can begin. The question now is whether Putin climbs down from his maximalist demands, which seem not to have changed despite the Easter Sunday ceasefire. Ukraine would have to agree not to join NATO permanently. It would also have to agree to give up a fifth of its territory before Russia stopped fighting. This includes at least 4 oblasts or provinces in the east, which is in the Donbass region, and also de facto recognition of Crimea as Russian territory, which Putin had annexed in 2014. Trump had famously said before becoming president that he would end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. Now, exactly 3 months into office, he's discovering how much harder the business of diplomacy is than the business of making tall promises on the campaign trail. Trump and Putin have spoken on the telephone twice since January. Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff has met Putin 3 times, including the latest one just a few days ago. Russian and American officials have met in Saudi Arabia, but the pace of finding a resolution in Ukraine has frustrated everyone, most of all President Trump himself. Russia wants to talk about all of its other outstanding diplomatic issues with the United States, including resumption of diplomats in each other's embassies, cooperation in space as well as other critical emerging technologies, and of course, the United States would want to wean Russia away from the Chinese orbit. Ukraine happens to be just one part of the larger dialogue between Washington and Moscow, a part which both sides would rather keep on the back burner, at least for now.